Welcome back, Curious Hearts. I'm Vera. Together, in every episode, we get to explore what it is we really believe, how we practice, and we get to meet people who are on their own spiritual path. Together, we begin. Hello, welcome back, Curious Hearts. This is Vera Lester, and I am here with my dear friend Becca Rich. Becca and I met 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't even know how many years ago.
I think longer.
Oh my gosh, you're right. It was before COVID.
Yeah. I think like
I met you
6-7 years.
Yeah, I met you in the bottom of I met you in one of the hardest periods of my life, actually, now that I think about it.
Same.
And here we are. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. We were just talking before I hit record that although I have known you in lots of different spiritual adjacent ways, we talk a lot about astrology. We share our Chani readings. We both are Leo risings, and there's all sorts of other witchy things that we talk about. But I also think of you as incorporating spirituality into your life in a lot of uncommon ways, actually, too. And so I was shared with you, right, that I don't even get to talk to you really about this kind of stuff in an explicit way very often. So I'm really excited about that. For those of you who are listening, Becca Rich is a world traveler. She has the incredibly enviable life, which she has designed and worked really hard for, where she splits her time between an organic off-the-grid farm in Victor, Idaho, and then for 6 months of the year, she and her husband travel around the world. And so I just am so grateful to have you. I'm so grateful for the work that you have done, the holistic time management training that I've done with you, and that you're my bestie. So with that, is there anything that you want to say before we dive in?
Just how cool it is to be we've known each other for, I think it's almost 7 years. This summer will be 7 years of knowing you, and that's a long time. That's a really cool.
It's a really long time.
A long amount of time.
I feel like my sense of time in the last 7 or 8 years is so distorted for obvious reasons. Anyway.
Yeah. But I'm just grateful for you and your curious heart.
Aw, I'm grateful for you and your curious heart. So the first question that I ask everybody is to tell me, as a framework and a background, what, did you grow up in church, or did you have a religious or spiritual tradition as a kid or in your family? What was that like?
Yeah, so no, as a kid growing up, my parents divorced when I was young, 3-ish, and the stories that I've been told, right? We're all told stories about our families of origin, that my parents were kind of kicked out of the church when they got divorced. They felt at least judged or whatever, that they either left or they were kind of shunned out. I'm not quite sure. So I went into, I lived basically my entire childhood up until high school, not going to church, not really a part of any religion or spiritual practice at all. And then I found Young Life, which is a whole other conversation. And I did maybe a couple years of Young Life, and I was a Young Life leader. I did Young Life camp. I did all sorts of stuff.
Because I had no idea what Young Life was until I met you. Will you just what's the 20 word, what is Young Life, if somebody doesn't know what that is?
It's a youth, non-denominational Christian sort of organization, and they have hip summer camps, and it's very young, and I don't know, you play guitar and sing songs together and do summer campy things with Jesus as the background.
Got it. So it's not associated with one particular church. It's just like broad non-denominational Christian, but everybody's in that like Christian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
We believe in Jesus at Young Life.
Great. Okay, so then you got involved with Young Life when you were a teenager?
Yeah, like maybe my sophomore year of high school, so however old that is, I guess 15-ish. And then, yeah, did summer camp and then became a mentor in college. And then basically my sophomore year in college, I had my own personal like falling out with the organization. It was just like, this isn't for me anymore. And yeah, so really like sophomore year of high school to sophomore year of college, those like 4 years were when I was a Christian.
It's funny because I joined the Unitarian youth group when I was in high school. I don't know if we've ever talked about that. And my mom was like, you can't be part of the youth group unless you go to church. And so like I would go to Unitarian church by myself because, you know, my dad certainly was not going to go with me and my parents were divorced at that point. And I kind of liked Unitarian church, but also was like, meh. But it's funny that like in those moments of being, you know, it's like trying to figure out who we are. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let me try this part of a self on for a minute.
Yeah, and it very much was that, you know, like I saw a lot of my friends in high school and then my friends a part of Young Life seemed so happy and like seemed like they had their lives together and they understood the world and they were like they're just happy. And so I was like, wait, like I want to be happy, like tell me what secret I need to know, right? Like it was very much my friends brought me into the organization for sure.
Yeah. And did it make you happy? Did you have any of that experience?
I don't know. I don't really remember. I mean, like the things that come to mind, like it was a sense of belonging, right? You're a part of a group, and you're a part of a group of people who have like such like pureness or like innocence. So like it was, you know, I had one group of friends in high school and college that were like the partiers, the drinkers, and I never really felt like I fit in with them. And then it was like my religious, spiritual friends, Christian friends, and like we would play board games and do like really fun stuff. And so I liked the activity surrounding that group of people. Like I felt more at ease. Like I'm a good puzzle in bed at 9 p.m. kind of person. Like that's just who I've always been. So yeah, it very much was like these people are doing things that I want to be doing, and there's like there's a pure funness and just like being silly and kid-like, and I think that's so important for joy and like just being alive, in my opinion. And I felt like, you know, all the people in my life that were like partying and drinking and like whatever, there was a sense of like sadness to it. And so I was really battling like the emotional piece behind these different like groups of people and like the overlappingness of them as well. And yeah, I think I was just like an angsty teenager trying to figure out what I liked and didn't like, and these groups of people helped me figure that out.
Yeah. An angsty teenager who liked to do puzzles and go to bed at 9 p.m., which is like not, those two things do not go together in my mind.
I like bleached my hair and like put eyeliner on just to like go to bed at 9 and like do puzzles. Yeah, that's the vibe. Read some books.
I like it. So interesting. So like really so much about like being clear about like your own values and like the things that were important to you and how you want to spend your time, and like being with other people who have similar sort of values and things like that, and also like that sense of belonging. All of that sounds like, yeah, the reasons that we are drawn to, especially to organized religion, I think.
Yeah.
right? It's like belonging to a group of people who like do things the way that we do them,
Yeah.
right? Or we do things the way that they tell us to do them. I mean, it's like a little complicated, like for different different traditions, obviously. So, what with that said, what is your religious or spiritual life look like now as an
Yeah.
adult?
Well, I think my time in, so like after I left Young Life, I'll like kind of give short story vibes. So like I got into yoga and meditation and wellness, spiritual wellness, I guess, if you could say that, and very much like mainstream mindfulness after. And this was like all paired with like a physical, mental, emotional burnout experience that I had as well. And so I very much like dove headfirst into yoga and I loved it. And I was like a 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Ashtanga girly for a year. And if you're listening to this, and Ashtanga is like one of the most intense physical yoga practices. It's really disciplined. It's very, really challenging. And so I dove head first and I loved it. I loved chanting. If I close my eyes and think about it, like I went to LSU, right, in Baton Rouge, and I can like bring myself right back to that first yoga studio. I can like smell the incense. I can like see the teacher like chanting. I just fell in love with it, and it felt like a new church, a new kind of church of people who were, to me, in my experience, a little bit more open-minded and more flexible. And that paired with like embodiment, right, moving the body and breathing and slowing down and self-awareness, coming back to your own experience, was really, really intoxicating and powerful. And I think my type A perfectionist tendencies even came out in my yoga practice, and so hence the Ashtanga every day at 6 a.m. And so yeah, I became a yoga teacher. During that time, I also did 2 levels of Reiki certification, and so I was starting to tap into like the energetic body and starting to learn about the tangential sort of systems of yoga, right? Like the chakras and like the all the different sort of things, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like energy bodies or koshas or
Yeah.
like the things that are sort of more. Um, I have a good friend who says we're going to reclaim the woo, like so, like yeah, sort of the things that are considered a little bit more woo woo, but like I mean
Right.
that in a good way,
Yeah.
in a descriptive way.
Yeah. And during all of this, I was studying to become a petroleum engineer, which I think is an important piece because it very much, as I.
I'm sorry to I just like I love how. Oh, and just by the by, studying to become a petroleum engineer.
My like
doing
graduation gift to myself for graduating with petroleum engineering degree was to become a yoga teacher in Costa Rica. That was like my gift to myself. I saved up and went to Costa Rica. So yeah, like during that entire time, I was realizing more and more like what are my values, what do I care about, how do I see the world, what are my political leanings, like just all of this stuff. And I realized I didn't want to be a petroleum engineer, right, for lots of reasons. And yeah, so I was a petroleum engineer for just like 3-4 years out of college in New Orleans, hence where we met. And throughout that time in New Orleans was when I kind of like let go of yoga in a lot of ways. Like I was teaching yoga for that entire time. I hosted a yoga retreat and I continued to like go to the local apothecary for every single like new moon and full moon circle and learning about crystals and astrology and just like all the things. I was just like, give me all the information. And so I think that was a big learning moment. Like New Orleans was a time in my life where I felt like I was like growing up and like coming into myself when I was also a full-time engineer. And then throughout that time, I realized I didn't want to live in a cubicle for 40 hours a week, and I didn't want to be in the engineering industry in that way, and yeah, so I left, and I think since then my spiritual practice has just continued to evolve into whatever it is today.
What is it? Okay, so yeah, so like it's so interesting because I just hear over and over again. I'm like, oh right, I'm like reminded, like every other sentence, like why we're friends, right? And being like, oh right, I also like those like really formative like crisis periods, right? Like your like physical but also emotional crisis that you had when you were in college, um, and how much those shape us, right? Because like my experience of coming into a spiritual life and practice is very over and over again, right? I mean, really started with Katrina, and then many times since then, like in larger and smaller ways.
Yeah, same. I didn't even talk about coming into 12-step recovery, which is a higher,
Right.
like, higher power. Learning that I had a higher power that wasn't like a Christian God was a really powerful experience for me. A year ago, I had a huge transformation going to an ayahuasca retreat in Peru, and microdosing psilocybin has completely altered my brain and my psyche and my spiritual practice. So yeah, there's been lots of things along the way that have made me into who I am today.
Yeah, and it's like a continued, like, I think, evolution and growth for all of us, right? Who are on a, there is no, the irony, right? Like, there's a spiritual path, but there's no spiritual destination,
Yeah.
right? There is no, like, arrival.
Yeah.
And sometimes that makes me, I have, also, like, recovering type A, like, pushed myself too hard and
Yeah.
all of those things. Anyway, I love it. So part of me, like, what you just said actually makes me curious about, like, discovering a higher power that was not a Christian God. You're welcome to, like, share a little bit more about what that means to you if you're willing. But I also am really curious, like, how that plays into your spiritual life now, right? Because I think it's really easy to, for me, after all these years, like I think about like, oh well, like Christian, like Christ on the cross, and like, old daddy in the sky, God, like, and there's all of this like very clear like instruction and information about how I relate with those like things. But yeah, like what does it look like for you now?
Yeah. Well, this weekend actually in my hypnosis training certification, I actually kind of just got like rocked about it, and so now I'm like I don't even know how to like I don't even know. So
Yeah.
before this weekend, my higher power is sort of like universal, bigger source energy that I believe we come from and go back to when we die, and like our physical bodies on this life, this plane. And it's just like this like eternal love and peace and ease, and we can get into a whole conversation, I'm sure, about free will, but like it has like knowledge, right? It knows about us and our interconnectedness, and it just like has, some part of me wants to believe that it has full control, but then another part of me doesn't. And so this weekend in particular, I learned that a lot of the number one thing that helps addicts recover in any addiction, for any addiction, is a sense of agency and control. And so it's really freaking crazy that the number one recovery program, the very first step of it is to surrender to a power greater than yourself. And so I my brain's kind of like I don't really know what to do with that.
Oh, it's so interesting. Like, yeah, we could have a whole conversation about the steps, but like, I think the nuance of that is the whole, for me, my experience, like the whole program in a nutshell is like realizing that I am powerless over the thing I had been trying to control all this time. Right? And I don't know, I'd be curious to know like what their orientation is to that. But like, and that I have, you know, serenity prayer is like the courage to change the things I can. It says
right.
like I have agency. I can do the thing. I can do some things that will dramatically improve the quality of my life. But I can't control everything. Right? Like I can't control you know, and I think about that like that's such an interesting
the other
like
thing
insight. It feels really important. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No apologies needed. I think the other thing this weekend that kind of blew my mind around it, and the person, my teacher is a recovering, my 12-step language, they were an addict. That's the other thing is when it comes to spiritual practice, we could get into a whole other conversation about ego and identity, right?
Sure.
When we identify with something, we hold on to it. And so when you go into a 12-step meeting and you say, hi, my name is blah, 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 I am blah, blah, blah. I'm an addict, I'm a recovering whatever, I'm an adult child, I am whatever. Like, you are holding on to that identity. You are continuing to tell yourself that that is who you are. And that is something that I love when people in my 12-step group, when they get on meetings and they say, like, I am a healing and healed adult child, or like I think that adding a thing makes it softer, but still like we're tying our ego to this identity, and so that is tricky. It's so tricky.
It is, and it's like I'm totally blown away by this because my brother is not like a spiritual person in the way that I would think of it. But he said to me once, and it stuck with me, like anytime you label yourself, you limit yourself.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple statement, but I think we all like really get it, right? Because it's like, okay, then I am that. And part of it is that like it's so interesting, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with why I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I can see how that's a blah, blah, blah. That Al-Anon is how I came into 12-step groups. And at least in New Orleans, we just say our names. We never say, aww. And I've heard people from other communities like who come in, they say like, you know, they might say like, I'm a grateful Al-Anon, right? Or I'm a recovering Al-Anon or something like that. But yeah, it's also because like, it's not that, it doesn't have the same kind of, activity. I mean, also, we don't get chips in Al-Anon either, right? Because it's really clear. It's like, okay, you went 24 hours without drinking anything. Great, you get this chip. I have not gone 24 hours without trying to control something outside of my control, right? It's like, I probably like relapse many times a day. So
yeah, and I think that is maybe a pure is a judgmental word. I think like doesn't matter what I think. What's really cool is that before we started recording, when you were like, how do you want me to talk about you, introduce you, blah, 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 and I was like, I don't know, I'm identifying less, or whatever word we couldn't figure out. And I love that it's coming full circle in this conversation, because that's my spiritual practice, is like trying to identify less and less with what I am. Like, it's sort of like I'm trying to, this can go as far as like my name, right? My gender, my sexuality, my work identity, my relationship status, like my childhood experience, even anxiety. Like, I claimed that I was an anxious person for years. And the moment that I give that up, like, I don't know if I've had a really intense anxiety attack in, I don't know, like at least a year.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I've heard you be like a little like nervous is how I would describe it.
Yeah.
But like I haven't experienced that from you in longer than that,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think it's like this, my spiritual practice is trying to experience more and like reconcile being human and the human experience, and try and experience more and more of like my true essence, which I think is limitless, is that like spirit, is that part of me that will, when my body dies, I will go back to whatever source energy that exists. And so, like, how do I experience more time on this planet in this human body, limitless, while also acknowledging and tending to my limits, if that makes sense. I think by acknowledging and tending to my limits, meaning my body's energy, my capacity, my nervous system, my brain, like my capacity, when I honor it, then I also feel more limitless.
Yeah, I get that. It's so fun. I'm also thinking about the conversation we were having before about like you deadlifting earlier today, right? And it's so interesting because like when I think about words like my limits, I mean the reality is one of my limits also is like I have to move my body on a regular basis, preferably daily, and I need to work hard, right? I'm like, again, here's the like, right, like recovering type A. If I like, now we're like stripping away our identities. It's so interesting because I had a whole experience of that, of like stripping away identity during I just came back from a breathwork retreat. So I'm just like, oh, we like had this, we did a lot of the same things. Yet again, we're having similar.
All the time.
Anyway, I love it. I love that happens for us. I'm thinking about somebody who might be listening to this who doesn't have a really rich and deep spiritual practice, or like is just starting to experiment or discover, and they hear us talking about, oh, I'm trying to like drop my identity as what I do for a living, or as a person, or my name, or my family, and like my first thought, and like the maybe this is also the devil's advocate, and my brain goes like, but then what? Like what are you, if you drop all those identities, like what are you left with? What happens next?
Yeah, I think it comes with a lot of nuance too, right? And paradox. Because my first thought is like freedom. But I think that that's spiritual freedom. My human body still needs money to exist, my work, because it's meaningful to me, my relationships, each other, like my family, all of these things that I'm practicing stripping is only for my spiritual experience, so that I may bring back to my human experience, my everyday body, limited, whatever, more love and more joy and more peace, more ease, right? So like,
yeah, more connectedness.
Yeah,
100%.
I think when I just am in my human experience, which I feel like was my, I don't know, first 24 years of my life, 25 years of my life, it very much was, how much can I get done? What do I need to do? I'm on a mission all day, every day. Can't sit, can't enjoy, can't do anything but what I think I need to do right here. Very transactional, based, very controlling, very anxious. And when I've slowly like done that surrender process, right, with the aid of a higher power, knowing that I'm held, I think a big spiritual practice for me is like envisioning like a massive hand, like an energetic hand holding me. Like when I'm anxious, when I was anxious, when I needed to feel like everything was okay, I had this like loving entity like holding me and taking care of me. And every time that I was able to like tap into my spirit and my essence and like stripping away all of those labels and tapping into that like resource, like that deep well of love, of interconnectedness. It feels so cliche, but it's so true. Like then like I said, I was able to just like bring that back more and more into my human experience, and it makes my human experience so much easier.
Yeah, it is. It's such a, so, one of the very first spiritual principles for me is like, I don't trust a concept, a spiritual practice, a spiritual life that doesn't have paradox in it. Right? It's like you can only feel resourced and limitless in this limited human body by detaching entirely from your human body and your identity, right? It's like it doesn't, it's like this, right? It's like it doesn't.
Well, it may not work in your conscious brain, but your conscious brain is only 4% of your brain. So your unconscious already knows it, so that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And there's like such a, I was talking to my students, I guess last week, about Kali, right? Like people love, I think they love the iconography of Kali. Like there's something about her that's like, uh, it's that like sort of dark, angsty, right, thing that we're drawn to. Um, there's like but that what it is, like why she's so terrifying is that she is stripping away all the things that you have ever known, right? She's coming for every single part of you. And to the ego, which is like how we move around the world, that is freaking terrifying.
Yep.
I don't know why I just censored myself.
Are we
But like
cussing here?
It's like I don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I can't decide if Apple will think that I'm an explicit podcast if I say fuck occasionally. It's like, what is it like? Isn't that still I think it's still PG-13 if it's only one F-bomb in a 60-minute segment. Anyway,
None of it matters.
So, no, none of it matters, and all of it matters so much, right? Like that's the paradox.
That's my spiritual practice. in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. So like, with that being said, like, so for me, I talk about paradox. Like, is there a principle of spiritual life that has felt really important to you, like ever, but maybe lately?
Yes, and it's a hot take.
I love a hot take. Let's do it. Let's do a hot take.
There is no such thing as truth.
Say more.
So, when quantum physics has proved that when you zoom in to this table, this computer, my body, all the subatomic particles are all the same. So like if you really think about it, like all of this is just the same thing. And like to me, that proves to me that like our brains are the only thing that's defining this as a computer, this is a table, this is my hand. And so like there really isn't anything true. Like everything is all made up by our brains and our perception and our interpretation of everything. And of course there's paradox there, right? My husband is famous for being like, but like if I throw a spoon at the wall, then I'm gonna, like, the truth is that I threw a spoon at the wall. And I'm like, sure, but like
right.
There's no spoon, there's no wall, there's no there's no hand to throw it technically per quantum physics. So yeah,
Right.
I think that like spiritual principle for me has been really powerful, of like, especially in this day and age of the poly crisis and collapsing worlds and all this stuff that takes us out of our spirits and into our human, flailing, limited, scared bodies, meat sacks. And yeah, just like remembering that whatever Donnie Trump says on the news, like, that's not true. So like, it's fine. I don't know.
It's so no. I mean, I know exactly where you're going. I have definitely led myself down the mindfuck path of like, actually, we don't know what the world looks like. We know what our eyes perceive the world to look like and how our brains are processing that sensory information. And you know, if you've ever known, simple examples like if you've ever known somebody who's colorblind.
Yep.
Right? That like actually, like why is my sense of color like more accurate than their sense of color?
Right.
Right? Like that's a, you know, who says who basically. Like it's a less common sensory experience that they're having. But again, it's like we're all having this like sensory experience.
Who says less common or more common though?
Oh, I just like, around like color blindness?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's like a whole other. I mean, and it's also like if there is no, I mean, what I hear you say is that there is no absolute truth,
Yeah.
right? For some people, and for me sometimes, I think, that's actually scary.
Yeah. And what's cool
tell me
is
more.
that, you know, you can drop through that fear and what's underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, it's like that old Buddhist thing that's like the bad news is that we're all falling all the time.
Yeah.
And the good news is there's no ground.
Yeah. Right. You just drop through it, and that fear also is only one part of the truth. Like maybe there's also a part of you that knows that actually is soothing, or that feels good, or something else. And I don't know, I think I love, as a whatever recovering control freak type A person, I think it's really powerful for me to live by this, at least for now, of I'm not going to push my thoughts and feelings onto other people, because I know that they're not the truth either, right? They're not an absolute truth. And I think we cause so much suffering for one another in the world by claiming that how we feel and how we think is the truth. And like memory, for example, like memory is constructive. Memory changes. There's a beautiful study that blew my mind of like, you know, I forget exactly the specifics, but when you ask someone a bunch of questions, they ask like this whole group of people, oh, you remember that Tuesday and this happened and that happened? And then they're like, yeah, it happened. And it didn't happen. Like our memory,
right?
Our memory is completely constructive. Like our thoughts, our feelings, our perception, all of it is when you attach yourself to it, creates suffering for ourselves and for each other. And so, yeah, I love that spiritual principle helps me hold everything more looser, and it helps me let things go.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Strong opinions loosely held.
Yeah, I still got lots of strong opinions, but like I'm not gonna tell people that they're right or wrong, and that comes with I'm still a freaking human. So like when my husband's like, this happened and you made me feel this way and blah blah blah, and I feel really strongly about this and whatever, like I still have an ego. I still have a human body and brain that I can't override, and I can't be in this like spiritual loosey goosey place all of the time. But it really, like I said, helps me come closer, quicker to like that truth in an argument with my husband, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen you move through stuff like that. I mean, certainly with Brandon, but also like with work stuff, with like other professional things or other, right?
Yeah, I think like the reverse psychology of the universe in me has like a weird on that topic. Like for example, I had a client that is on their last session, and I'm just like, whatever, if they don't want to work together anymore, I don't really care. And then they immediately text me and they're like, hey, I want to continue working together. Like, I don't know what that's about, but the reverse psychology is real.
Yeah. I like, again, like my devil's advocate is like, maybe all of this is like a trick that we play on our brains to be like less anxious and less freaked out, you know? And also like we can sense, like we know, like, you know, that feeling in somebody else when they like really need you to do a thing or want a thing from you. And you're like, I don't, that's sticky. And that it is the people who are like, no, whatever works for you, that you're like, oh my gosh, please. Like, how can I work with you more?
Yeah. It's like every market that I walked into in Mexico, when like they're all shouting at you like, come to my stall, and they're all selling the exact same thing, and then I just naturally go to the ones that are just doing their work and just going about their lives and not trying to like lure me in.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? This is our like your next program, spiritual selling. I'm kidding, totally kidding. Don't get me started on the commodification of spirituality. Okay. So theoretically, last question is like, what is a really useful spiritual practice for you today?
Should I bring it back to my work? Because that's like my everyday life.
Sure. I love your work. And time is part of, I believe that time is core to a spiritual life. So yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this could be a whole hour-long conversation about spiritual time. But like, I think that when we do the things, like our spirits are limitless, right? And so like our spirit wants us to do the podcast. Our spirit wants us to do all of these amazing things, right? The spirit doesn't know that we're operating at the pace of our brains and our bodies that is limited by our human life. And so my daily spiritual practice is to start by listening to my spirit. What does my spirit want? My spirit wanted to go to pickleball this morning. I had all this work that needed to do. And I was like, no, like I need to be outside in the sun and laughing. Pickleball is like laughter for me. And then, right, that's such a privileged thing to say, right? Because there's the whole environmental aspect of all of this, of like living within capitalism, having responsibilities. Like the entire time I was like, my husband doesn't know I'm at pickleball, and if he knew I was at pickleball, he'd be upset because he wanted me to garden. Sorry, Brandon.
He won't hear it today. He won't know what day it is.
That's so fine. He has my location. He probably could have saw that I was at the pickleball courts. But either way, yeah, I start by listening to my spirit first and foremost. on a daily, weekly, anytime I'm planning, anytime I'm writing a to-do list, my to-do list is spiritual AF. It is what my spirit wants. And then I translate that into, okay, what is within my actual limitation, capacity, human experience? And what usually happens for most people and why we feel so time scarce is because we're still trying to cram our spirit into our human body.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Yeah.
So, so then what happens?
For me or for other
Like,
people?
For you. I mean,
for me, I put it in my calendar. I put all the things that my spirit wants to do in my capacity. I figure out what is within my capacity, what's realistic, and that requires lots of grieving, lots of honoring, lots of honesty, lots of integrity, and then I do my thing of using the tools that we have available to us to put it in the calendar and just follow and make it happen, and continuing to listen to my spirit throughout the day, changing things, being flexible, adapting to both my spirit and my human body and brain. And I just ebb and flow, and I hold it loosely. That's the second biggest thing is that, okay, if you make a plan, you can't change it, you can't reprioritize, you can't move things around. Like, we feel like a failure because we make a plan and we don't follow it perfectly or don't follow it at all. And the point of the plan is to confirm to yourself, like, I'm spending my time in a meaningful way. This is how I want to spend my time. That doesn't mean it's going to go according to that. Like, time is its own alive entity. So, yeah.
Okay, we have to have another conversation about that statement alone because, yeah, anyway, that feels like such a, and like, even as you're talking, like, I was also thinking, like, one of my questions, like one of the thoughts that came up was like, but then isn't your spirit disappointed that it can't do everything?
Yeah.
And I was like, of course not. Because it's like so full in every moment.
Oh, right? That's interesting.
It's like every moment is complete. You know what I mean? Because I think about, it was my first thought. It's like, okay, you have this like giant, right, like in yogic terms, like, and in Hinduism, it's like sadguna and nirguna, right? Like with qualities, without qualities. So you have this like without qualities, the spirit has like limitless and eternal, and like trying to fit that into this tiny human limited body, that like the spirit would somehow be disappointed in the physical human limits. And I'm like, it's like it's like a complete misunderstanding.
Yeah. I think so when you start to break things down into like parts work, internal family systems, like maybe the real parts of us that are disappointed or upset are like the inner child, right? The inner child wants to have fun and joy and like play and stuff. And then you can also think about like the mind that's conditioned to believe that you aren't worthy unless you do all of these things, and you have to do them for survival. You have to make money, you have to pay your bills. So like there's probably a lot of different parts that are disappointed. But yeah, you're right. Like, I don't think that it's spirit, because also it's already been done on the spiritual plane. There's no doing on the spiritual plane.
Right. Exactly. And that's like I think about that as like it's clear to me that like some part of the next project will be about ritual, and we've talked a little teeny bit about this. And one of the things that has continued to echo for me in from Mali Doma Some's work is he says that like you do before you enter into anything, you do it in ritual. Like you do it on the spiritual level happens first, and then you go and do the thing, right? Yeah. Because it's like already, and even that, it's like it's already happening on the spiritual level. It's already happened. Everything's already happening all the time. But we like affirm that that is true in our physical reality through ritual.
Yeah. Yep. I think doing is like the human and being is the spirit, and how do we, I think a really common thing that a lot of folks experience, and I used to experience, is like you maybe it's like a weekend and you're like chilling and everything is like spiritual and hunky-dory and fine and stuff, and then like the moment Monday morning hits, you're like, like all the stuff I need to do. Like we become different humans, like we're different entities. And like, what if every day felt like the weekend? Like how do we free ourselves from this like construct of who we are at certain times in the week or day or whatever? Like it's sort of like Severance, where we have like an innie and an outie, where we're just like we're doing and then we're being, and then we're doing and then we're being.
That's why Severance is so compelling to people, is that it is this metaphorical expression of what it's like to have to like bifurcate, or more than that, maybe more than two pieces, like how to separate yourself to be able to show up as one person here and one person there. Yeah. And then that there's a struggle between those two parts of our identity.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think my spiritual practice has been like, how do I become more oneness with these parts?
Yeah. Do you have any other like final thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think like just in my experience, like the number one thing that prevented me from living spiritually, like being my spiritual self in my day-to-day, was the pressure of productivity, the pressure of doing, the pressure of time, the pressure of survival. Yeah. And once I reconciled those things, or when I reconcile those things, because it's an ongoing practice, like that really is when I feel the most free, because I can love and honor and respect my humanness and my limitations, while also feeling that like deep, resource rich aliveness that just like creates this balm for survival.
Yeah, and that part, like what you just described, I think is actually available to anyone at any time.
Yeah.
Right? It's so easy. I think it's easy to minimize or dismiss this kind of spiritual practice, or like operating with spiritual alignment and awareness, as like a privileged thing. It's like, oh, well, you don't have to worry about. It's like, I still have to pay my mortgage. I still pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't assign my inherent worth. And it took me a lot longer than it took you, which is why I constantly am just like, what?
But I'm doing like radical shit though. Like I'm like, how do I volunteer at so-and-so co-living in Mexico next winter, so any money I make I can just give back or invest or like put into my retirement?
Yeah, I mean, like I know but that's what I mean. I'm just like, what? I don't even know what to. Anyway,
I'm like, how do
I constantly am just like,
the most
what?
cheaply?
How did you? Yeah. How do I? And it's exactly that. I mean, like, I'm not sad that I own my house and I live where I do. Like, it brings me so much joy and comfort, and like, my spirit is like, look at my new banquette and look at my cute like wallpaper. And also, it's like just a different. It's like a one of my chosen human limitations. But that's not even what I mean. It's like, we might dismiss. I think that it's easy to dismiss or to confuse folks who are operating inside of a spiritual, like spiritually guided life as being disconnected from reality, or not having physical needs, or not, working for money, right? And that, our financial needs are just facts based on our physical limitations in the world that we live in. But yeah, that like the practice of separating those things, it doesn't actually matter what the reality of your everyday life is, that still can be, I don't know, I think it's, anyway, that's also a different conversation for a different day, probably.
It just boils down to, like, how do you bring more love into your daily experience? Everyone needs more love and more connection and more ease and more joy and more, like, that's literally all we're saying. Like, it doesn't matter if you have 10 children or you have $100,000 in debt or whatever is happening in your life.
Or if you have $1 million in the bank.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I've had very wealthy clients for whom this is like completely, that becomes they attach their identity and their value and their meaning to that.
Yeah. This is like, boiling it all down into one little spiritual nugget is like,
yes,
you separate from your identities, your human identities, to experience that love and that ease so that you may bring it back into your day-to-day experience. That is possible for anyone, no matter who you are or what you're doing.
Hallelujah. Amen.
Jesus.
Aho. So be it. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What a pleasure.
Thanks.
What a gift. I'm so excited to be able to share this with everybody else too.
Yeah, same.
You guys are lucky. And yeah.
May we be free of our identity.